they had an experience at home connected with somebody who had died 3 years previously in our own churchyard. Now we live quite near the church. We're just about a little over 400 yards from the church, which is that we call it down the road. And we would have some of our land in front of the church as well, and we would have a lot of contact going up and down to that particular property. But anyway, I was led after a long period to pray for this man. Michael was his name. He was dead about 3 years. And I used to have, prior to that, when I would go into church, I used to experience this particular situation in the middle of the avenue going up to the church, and that went on for months. Till eventually one evening I was going into Mass, and I experienced the same thing, but it didn't last that long, maybe less than 10 seconds. And with that was this beam went across from this spot, straight out across the churchyard, and rested on this headstone, and I followed the beam. And the message I got when I arrived there was, pray for this man. So I prayed for Michael, said an Our Father, Hail Mary, and glory be to the Father. And the minute I done that, the experience disappeared, and I went into church. But the next time I came, the same thing happened. The experience in the avenue of the churchyard had gone. The beam was still there, pointing at the headstone, but of a lesser intensity. And each time, if there was nobody coming at this stage, as I've already related, I would be going to Mass early. So there wouldn't be too many going into Mass at the time I was going. I would go over and pray at the headstone for this man, and then it would go. So, as a result of my experience in 1988 in Medjugorje, we organised a group to go out in 89 for the end of September and the beginning of October. And this experience continued on for some time with this man. And if there was somebody coming, I would just pray for them as they passed, and then it would go. But coming here, going to Medjugorje at the end of September, it got very powerful. And every time, the nearer we came to going to Medjugorje, the more powerful it got. And I took it then that we were to pray for him out there. And I discussed this with a friend of mine when we went out there, and he was actually shocked to know that I should have an experience like this. And I said to him, will you pray for this man when you're here, and maybe have a Mass offered for him as well? And he said he would do that, and we both carried out that part of the program and prayed for him a lot out there. But when I came back then from that pilgrimage, which was very successful, my first place to go was to go down to the churchyard, to my friend Michael. But there was nothing like this great sense of peace around the area where Michael was buried. And from that on then, about 2 days later on then, I was drawn to pray for another person who had died quite a number of years in the churchyard. And 2 days later there was another one, and then there was another one, and I had 3 then. And I was praying for them for quite a long time. And eventually one of them went. These people would have been dead about 40 years. And then there was another one, and eventually the 3 went to be replaced by about 5 in the same fashion. So that continued on for some time. There was nobody praying for money myself. And then it began to, when I go to maybe a funeral in a neighbouring parish, and I began to be drawn to pray for people who were dead in that churchyard and needed to be prayed for as well. And I started to write down the names then in a copybook at home. And the names were building up by degrees. I was then drawn in to pray for people in the memorial columns of the local papers. And it's like expanding, where people would be killed in road accidents on the road. And maybe 5 miles before I come to the spot, I began to pick up these vibes. I knew there was somebody along the road somewhere needed to be helped. And when we come to the spot, it would get so powerful, I could just get out and stand on the spot where that person died, whether it was in the hedgerow or on the road or wherever. And I wouldn't know who they were, what their names were, or whatever. But he kept putting down the names anyway. And I discovered, the names were going off very slowly, and they were increasing very much. And I remember at one stage that the names were gone up to, I had about 150 names written down. And there was a pilgrimage going from our place to Knock, the annual pilgrimage, and I decided to go on that. Now I hadn't gone very often up to date. I had been in it a few times. And I decided at this time that and I would pray the Stations of the Cross in Knock for these list of holy souls, and I would divide them by 14. And I was hoping, that quite a few would be held. But when I came back after going on that pilgrimage, I discovered that every soul that I had written down was gone, were totally wiped off. And that was a fantastic, I knew there was something special about Knock, or something. Our Lady had a part in this. So I started to go, when I'd have 30 or 40 then, I was going to Knock quite often.